Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Much of the ministry of Jeremiah was during the time of Josiah. And if you remember, there were basically two main things that happened under the rule of Josiah. One was that they repaired the temple. And the second one is that they found the book of the law. They found the covenant of Moses there in the temple as they were repairing it. And these were two major things that happened during the time of Josiah. And it's interesting that in Jeremiah we have these two things as somewhat of a major theme in the chapters that we've read thus far. Yesterday in chapter 7 we read about the temple. Jeremiah was told to go to the temple, to the house of the Lord, and to speak some words to the people there. And one of the things that was going on was the people were saying, the temple of Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh. They were trusting in the fact that they had the temple, and they thought that that gave them security and that they didn't have to worry about other nations and things like that, and that God would protect them no matter what. And of course, the message was that, that's not going to save them. That doesn't make up for their sins, for the way that they're mistreating people. Just simply having the temple wasn't going to rescue them from impending judgment. And in our reading today, we see the second thing in chapter 11 with the covenant. As a matter of fact, a section that Jeremiah reads from or refers to in chapter 11 is actually from Deuteronomy, which is believed to be the section that Josiah heard whenever he was convicted of the fact that they had violated God's law. But nonetheless, he brings out this covenant that God had made with them, that if they would listen to him, he would be their God, they would be his people, he would give them this land flowing with milk and honey. They were God's covenantal people. But once again, the message is that that's not good in and of itself. If you're committing sin and transgressing the law of the Lord, actually the covenant itself has words to speak against you, that there are curses also in the law of Moses, in the message given to them, that if they did not obey the voice of the Lord, that God would drive them out of the land. And that's what they were facing during the ministry of Jeremiah. And so the temple wouldn't save them from judgment if they continue to violate God's commands, nor would just being God's covenantal people save them from, despite their sins. As a matter of fact, the covenant itself speaks against them because of their sins. And neither one of these things was going to help them. And so, as we think about it, these two things might sound very familiar to us because we as New Testament believers have both of these things. We are the temple of God. We're told time and time again, especially Paul speaking to the Corinthians, talking about the church as the temple of the living God, collectively, but also individually. We are all a temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians chapter 6. We are the temple of God, and we have the presence of God with us all the time. But we're also God's covenantal people. The book of Hebrews brings out time and time again how we are under the new covenant that God has established through Jesus Christ. And so we are both the dwelling place of God, and we are also God's covenantal people, very similar to what they had back then, just in a more deeper and richer way. But we should not make the same mistake that they did back then today in thinking that because we are the dwelling place of God, because we are God's covenantal people through Jesus Christ, that somehow then we can just live however we want. We can mistreat people. We can sin and transgress against God's will. And that we can just live a life of worldliness and passions and living according to the lust of the flesh and things like that. And just live a life contrary to God. And then just think that we're okay because we are God's dwelling place and that we are his covenantal people. The message in Jeremiah ought to warn us as well, to say that can't make up for a life of sin and rebellion against God. What it ought to do is actually cause us to all the more want to serve the Lord and all the more draw close to him and all the more obey him, because we understand what a wonderful thing it is that we would be called the people of God, that we would be his temple, that we would be his covenantal people, and that we would have such a relationship. That should cause us to want to be holy just as God is holy, as 1 Peter brings out. So let's be encouraged today to say, you know what? Because we are the dwelling place of God, because we are his covenantal people, we all the more do not want to sin against him. We want to stay true to him. We want to obey him. And we want to walk according to the Spirit and not according to the flesh. We want to set our minds on heavenly things, not on the things of the earth. And we want to live a life well-pleasing to him. And hopefully we'll be encouraged to do that as we do our reading today. And with that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.